to Live Well podcast. My name is Anna Maria, and it is such an honor to have you here on the show today. And I'm so looking forward to introducing you to my good friend and incredibly vibrant and passionate human being, Stella Billerey. She is a space holder, an occupational therapist, an embodied and somatic practitioner and teacher, and she's also an advocate for accessible yoga. We speak about all things pertaining to her work at the moment, and this includes embodiment work, working with acute mental health conditions, the language of yoga, and creating inclusive, accessible spaces and retreats. I'm so thrilled that you're here and listening to all of this, and I really hope you enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Hello, Stella. How's it going? Thank you so much for coming on the show and chatting to me today. It is an honor and a privilege.
Bless you. Thank you for having me.
Amazing.
Aww.
So I always love to start our conversations just by kind of diving into the reasons perhaps why or how you came to show up in the world in the way that you do today.
Straight in there with the big questions. How I came to show up in the world, how I am today. Well, at the moment, I've just qualified as an occupational therapist. So that's a big part of how I'm currently showing up in the world today. So I qualified just a few weeks ago, and I've been doing my master's for the last 2 years now. And it's my first position as a qualified occupational therapist, and I'm working on an acute male ward at the moment within mental health. So yeah, that's a big part of what I'm doing at the moment. And within that work, I'm also incorporating my dual training and my work as a yoga teacher and a holder of space and a person who likes to feel embodied and likes people around them to feel embodied. So yeah, that's a big part of what I'm doing right now.
Okay, amazing. So how exactly does that look? So you're working with occupational therapy, and with this kind of embodiment work. How do you present that in those spaces, working with men, you said?
Yeah, I'm working on an acute male ward. It shows up in different ways, I think. I mean, what I do on the ward can be quite varied. So it could be one-to-one work. Sometimes assessments are required, particularly if there's something complicated that's happening at discharge and they need OT input in order to advise on, best routes out of our ward and onto, X, Y, and Z. I run groups on the ward as well. I help other people to run groups on the ward. So it's really quite varied, the work. But in terms of how I incorporate embodiment, so it might be, so we have a community meeting. It's where I chair it, and anybody's welcome to come on the ward. So it might be service users, it could be other members of staff, and it's very conversational. And we might start that meeting with putting our feet on the floor and taking 2 deep breaths. So it can be quite subtle rather than we're doing a yoga session or a relaxation session. And actually I try to avoid using language that might put people off. So if people have certain preconceptions about what yoga is, I find it more useful just to call it relaxation, because we all want to be relaxed, don't we, especially in that kind of environment. And I think it's really important, because when you've got people who are acutely unwell and they're in, a place that is quite sterile and alien to them, perhaps, or maybe not alien to them, maybe it's not their first time in this kind of service, and they're there because they're unwell for various different reasons. And with mental illness, there's also a feeling of lack of safety in the body. I think for most people, it's probably a fair statement to make. So anything that you can gift people in general, in any setting, that makes them feel safer in their body is a good thing.
Yeah, amazing. So you said a lot of things there that I definitely want to touch back in on. definitely around languaging. I want to go back to that one, but this idea of befriending the body, and particularly in these care situations where you're possibly working with people who have trauma histories and abuse histories, perhaps, this notion of befriending the body. And I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper in on that, if possible, just kind of explaining maybe what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it can look very different for each person, and I think giving people options and giving people agency over their own body and the ability to consent or not to whatever is happening in a session. So something as simple as, if you feel safe enough to close your eyes, setting up the environment so that it is safer. If you've got an open ward where, if you've got 17 service users and goodness knows how many members of staff, if you're doing a session on the ward, that's going to be a really different cultivation of safety. So if you're doing it in a room that has a locked door, and reminding people, we're in this room, I have my eyes open, the door is locked, you can close your eyes if you want to. And inviting people into their experience and how that experience manifests differently in all of us.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Really sounds like
it is
really beautiful work. Really tough as well, I would imagine, like both for the people participating, because it can be incredibly confronting to have to. So I know you steer away from the ideas of yoga, or not the ideas, but the language around yoga. But the invitation of yoga is to go inwards. And if you've spent so much of your life, trying not to do that for fear, or because of pain, or a sense of deep vulnerability and unsafety in those spaces, it must be a very challenging space to invite people into. And I'd love to touch it again, the languaging you use there. It's so important, and how language really impacts. And what do you think about, like, even the idea of changing the language you use in just general yoga classes? Do you think there's perhaps there would be nice to maybe invite more of that into the general sort of yoga classes that we see in the United States?
Really, really good question. To be honest, it's been so long since I went to a general yoga class that I've actually kind of forgotten what they look like. And I think the people that I am drawn to and that I tend to practice with, they use language in a very intelligent and a very trauma-informed way. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I don't tend to go to yoga classes. There's loads of beautiful yoga teachers here in London, which is where I am right now. But yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure that I'm qualified to answer it, because I haven't been into a yoga space for so long. I think yoga teachers, there has been a shift in consciousness generally. I mean, even in terms of, gendered invitations and steering away from addressing people in a very binary way. I think there's a shift, and I see conversations, really intelligent conversations, happening on social media and amongst peers as well. And I think that's really encouraging.
Yes, absolutely. I was gonna, I think that is there is a huge shift happening, and we definitely see it. But what do you, maybe again, it's touching into that again, what do you think, how do you think we could improve that even more, like make spaces more inclusive, more safe for people to feel?
I mean, I think access and how we're making spaces inclusive, and the ways in which they're not inclusive. So if you've got a yoga studio that has, multiple stairs down or multiple stairs up, then anybody who isn't completely able-bodied, or anybody who isn't a single person, if you've got a buggy, how are you going to get a buggy down two flights of stairs or up 2 flights of stairs? So literally the way people are able to access the spaces. And I guess it's like yoga spaces and yoga studios, who they're designed for, and they tend to be designed for white women, able-bodied, slim, financially fluid, because you can't get into those spaces if you're not those things, or you might feel out of place if you are. So yeah, and then there's, I think is socioeconomics intersects everything, and yogic principles and yogic practice for me is like a deeply political thing, because it's like, yeah, who's got access to this, who's got access to these ancient practices, and in what ways are we making them more accessible and more inclusive? Yeah, and that, I guess that could be down to who's teaching as well in those spaces. Like if you've got a big fat queer person who's teaching, then perhaps more big fat queer people are going to want to come to the class. And I guess then with that, you've got tokenism. It's like, is it a tick box? Is it, oh, let's get more people of color on our teaching list, because that's what that's the buzzword at the moment. That's what's bouncing around. And then it becomes contrived. So I guess it's the intention behind it. It's like, is it a pure intention of wanting to make it more inclusive, or is it performative? Like, yeah, let's make our spaces more inclusive, but they're still £14 a class. So I think it's really, really complicated.
It is at that,
yeah.
absolutely. And I think, well, that's a really great lead into perhaps the kind of classes you offer, this kind of idea of creating a more community-based approach, creating a more inclusive space where affordability perhaps isn't necessarily an issue. And I'd love for you to chat a little bit about that kind of offering you have.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. I think it's that is also a bit of a minefield, because I believe in working for free sometimes. If you're giving your labor, the fruits of your labor, as a gift, for a good reason, because it's a demographic who can't access the service otherwise, or because it's something charity based, or it's to raise awareness for a topic, that's all well and good. However, I think we've made a bit of a rod for our own backs, and I hate the word industry, but as an industry, because it's almost like our gifts of space holding, and it is a gift to do it well. And we all know that if we're good at what we do, it's because we spent, I don't know if I can swear or not. Can we swear on the podcast, or maybe not?
You can.
Try
Sure.
not to. Because we spent a lot of money, on our training, like thousands and thousands, and close to £10,000 often, for people who are good at what they're doing. And so it's like, well, we need to live, and we need to eat, and we need somewhere safe and warm that we can live. So on the one hand, we don't want to be devaluing our really valuable service and our precious time that we ain't ever going to get back. And on the other hand, it's wanting to give something and offer something from this place of inclusivity. So it is complicated. And yeah, I don't have all of the answers. I'm trying to figure it out. But since I came back to London, I've been really during the 2 years that I've been away, thinking about what I value and what I'm doing, and how they match up, and how they're in conflict. And so yeah, I'm in the process of creating a sliding scale community class, which has recommendations for, if you've got manageable debt, and you've got somewhere safe to live, and you're working, and you have different stipulations, different ideas. And I think a lot of it does come down to housing. Is you're in a very different situation if you're broke, but you've got a house that you own the majority of, psychologically, to if you're a person who's living in unsecure social housing, or housing with a landlord that can just take your tenancy away or up the rent. It's very different. It's psychologically unsafe to live in these conditions that we're living in. So I'm giving you quite a long, convoluted answer to the question. But anyway, yeah, I've created this sliding scale community class, and the idea is that people come, they pay what they can afford, and hopefully that will encourage people who might not want to access yoga in more traditional settings to access it. It hasn't actually started yet, So, and we'll see how it goes, but that's my intention behind it.
Yeah, I think it's, it's so interesting. I think, yeah, the value you place on yourself, and like you say, the amount of education and time that people who truly care about this sort of type of work, it is essentially, it's like a degree, level of education that people will get in terms of like the time investment and money investment.
Yes.
And I think there can be that sense that it almost should be free. Some people think like this, a practice like this, the intention should be like, oh yeah, we're giving, it's all love and wonderful, and and that's a really problematic space, because then we can have that sort of psychological sense of like, oh, maybe I should like be giving more. But then yes, how do you balance it out with your own safety and ability to continue on the work? The other interesting thing is I've worked around this idea of offering people the opportunity to pay what they can. It's kind of like a donation-based system. And the feedback I received from that was that all of a sudden people were like, well, I'm not sure how much that is. And like, now I'm like apprehensive about going because I feel bad that I'm not giving enough, or I'm going and then I'm giving too much and I can't afford to actually give that much on a continuous basis. So I like this idea of the sliding scale and giving people kind of a parameter for what that is. And maybe it changes week to week or day to day, maybe today I can pay this, but next week I can't. And like, I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, I think we like guidelines, don't we? We like some kind of boundary as humans, as part of our nature. But yeah, it does change from a week to week basis, I think. Some weeks really hard financially, and I think there needs to be space and flexibility for that. But at the same time, we as space holders, we have to sustain ourselves. And I think that's a real dichotomy, and we're in a problematic situation where we're freelancing, we're doing an activity that requires being able-bodied. I broke my leg last year. I didn't work all summer. There was no backup plan for that. And I know many other teachers who have been in similar situations. If you get pregnant, there's no maternity pay. So where's our stability? And how can we give to the best of our abilities if our pot isn't full? And yeah, it's really, and that's, to be honest, that would these things were big motivations in becoming an occupational therapist, because I just got fed up of the wellness machine and the wellness industry. It's like, well, who's well in this? Who's doing the best out of all of this? The students, they're doing okay. And what about the what about the teachers? How are the studio owners doing? It's I don't know. It's really complicated, and I think I became quite just cynical, and almost just like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore, because if certain elements of it feel really toxic, and and so that was one of the things that led me to think, okay, well, but I do love it. And I believe that it's a healing practices, plural, many practices. But I don't want to burn out. I want to be able to sustain myself and still contribute something meaningful to the community.
I think that's so important. I do see so many teachers being burnt out, not being able to show up in the way that they probably would want to be showing up because of just sheer exhaustion, the volume of classes, the level of pay. There's definitely a lot of issues there, and then people just not minding themselves, people just kind of getting caught up in the machine, and then that kind of almost like competitiveness towards getting classes, and it's definitely behind the scenes is a very interesting sort of view of the wellness industry. And I
how
think
do you manage it, out of curiosity? How do you find that balance? Because you seem from my perspective, like a very balanced person. How do you deal with that?
It has definitely been a process. I started off and I had a lot of the being new in a city where no one knew me, and it is very much a clique kind of industry, so you kind of have to know people to get your foot in the door, and that's a process. And I worked other jobs in order to support myself in the beginnings, and then it's ever since it's been again a kind of balancing out and a shifting from here to there, working out what works, working out how much I can actually give and how much rest I actually need. And I also think, like, as I'm also a clinical massage therapist, so that is a real support for me. I can't honestly imagine trying to make a living purely as a yoga teacher. It's really tough, and I understand that it's really tough for studio owners as well. So it's not just like you can't just keep going, oh, the studio owners are making a bundle of money. They're not, they're struggling too. And generally they're well-meaning people trying to do their best to support their teachers and to provide this beautiful practice to a community, but it's really hard, and who you can't, and then do you put the prices back on the people who want to come? You can't do that either, because as we say, that continues this sort of trajectory of it being inaccessible. So as you say, highly complicated, and I don't necessarily have any solutions, but I definitely am an advocate for people who, asking for their worth, and I think that's important. There are people who can afford it, so how do you both receive and then are able to then have enough energy to give to projects that are maybe pro bono or more kind of voluntary, I think that's the where you find the balance. It's like, okay, I want to be able to give this, so I need to be able to make enough so that I'm safe, because it's really challenging. But I'm very excited to see how your classes go. I'm definitely going to come along. I can't wait to.
It'd be lovely to have you.
And I've been to your classes, and I think they are so beautiful, and everything you say around the languaging and inclusivity, it's totally, that is the type of class I seek out as well. These are the types of teachers I look to and I'm inspired by. It is language. Language is so powerful. It's just like we could be doing exactly the same shape, and there's such a different quality of feeling, different intention behind why we're doing it, and how maybe we even experience it in the body through language. Like, so it's powerful.
It's powerful stuff.
Absolutely. Yoga has so many different sort of branches in a way that all lend themselves to working in kind of with and with mental health. What do you think are maybe your favorite or have been the most impactful for you personally? Because I know it can be super different for every individual, but for you.
In my practice or in my offering in the setting?
For you personally,
Me, I think for me, my spiritual practice has come from my body more than from my thinking mind. I've never been really one for long periods of seated meditation, and from the pleasure of my body, from my sensual body, and that's always been a consistent thing for me, I guess. I have had periods of this, obviously, as we all do, just put on Netflix and not veg out and not think for a while and be disembodied, and I've also experienced disassociation from my body, but I think generally I've been very much in my body in terms of how I go about my life. I like debauchery sometimes, and I like sensuality, and I think when I found movement practice, yogic movement practice, that incorporated the sensual body, this is when the pennies really started to drop, and like the two teachers that really influenced my practice, my enjoyment of yoga, so Molly Morris and her embodied take on anatomy, which is very much a homage to the Franklin's method, which really spoke to me. And there's a real big overlap, I think, in Franklin's method and how yoga can be applied in somewhere like acute mental health setting, because it's very much visualization, proprioception, interoception, the vestibular system. It's very body based, you know, it's not esoteric. It's like, this is your body, you're in it, you know, you can feel it, it's here. And so, yeah, Molly Morris was very influential. And then Julie Martin, who, yeah, when I first discovered creative nonlinear flow, it was actually in Yoga Rise. It was Fernie's class on a Sunday, and I remember feeling like I was dancing. And yeah, it makes me a bit emotional actually to talk about it. It was just liberating, and there being so much permission to experience what we are experiencing in our bodies. And we're all doing the same movement, but we're experiencing different things. So yeah.
Love that. I know it can be really challenging to even start to take a small step in the direction of experiencing some of the things that you've just spoken about. You know, what would be your advice for anyone who maybe wants to kind of lean into more of that type of practice, where you really are feeling into that, like, as you say, you know, sensuality and full body sense?
Yeah, I guess find a teacher who teaches like that is a good place to start. I think once you've done something a certain amount of times, you're able to hold that space and replicate the experience on your own without kind of having your hand held or being supervised. But initially, at least for me, you know, going to a space where yoga was happening and doing it as a collective and being supported by you know, the warm embrace of the teacher was really important. So yeah, if that's something that you want to do, find some, if you're like me and you learn better by doing things in groups and having that accountability, find somebody who teaches like that, because not everybody does, you know. There's so many different branches of yoga and they're all beautiful and they all have a purpose. So yeah, it's finding what you like. Maybe it's not the same as me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You know, if I look back on some of my first yoga experiences, it was obviously very, very body based, and I was able to do the movements and replicate what was being shown, but I don't think I was necessarily feeling into my body, you know. And when you first experience that, and when somebody like maybe invites you to feel things in your body in a different way, that it's a really interesting experience. And you realize you were maybe kind of glazing over some of those things, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back when I used to absolutely hate Shavasana. It was like hell, you know. God, is it going to be 5 minutes? Is it going to be 10 minutes? Is it going to be, you know, it was just hell to lie and to be still and to have my eyes closed and to not feel like I was going mad, you know, not feeling like I wanted to move my body, just to relax, you know. And I think that's maybe it's something that lots of people experience when they first come into these spaces. And I remember as well going to the first workshop that I ever did with Julie Martin, and there was an invitation to, you know, start movement in the fingers, and so something along these lines, and then the wrists, and then the elbows, and then how does that go into the shoulder? And I was so freaked out because, well, I love to dance, but being in a yoga setting and being like, okay, just, I'm not going to tell you what to do, you move your body, was like, what? what the hell is this? This is, I feel so uncomfortable. So yeah, it's not like you start doing it and it makes, maybe it does for some people, but it's practice, isn't it? It's all practice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally resonate with that like invitation to see what feels good in your body, which is an instruction I give, or an invitation I give quite a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, just explore, and like I can imagine like hearing that, remember hearing that for the first time and being like, extremely self-conscious, like,
Yes.
what's everybody
Yeah.
else doing, and like,
Yes.
and then when you actually do like start to move in that way, it's like, oh right, okay, yeah. And then that really lends itself to your own home practice as well. That gives you almost a sense of being able to guide yourself in your own home practice also, which is pretty cool. And then, so do you do any of that kind of stuff with your groups at the moment, with your occupational therapy?
Yeah, I take a lot of inspiration actually from Molly and from the knowledge she imparted to me about Franklin's method. I've also done a day training which was in about yoga and sensory integration. So sensory integration does overlap with yoga, but it is a discipline in and of itself, and it's about the sensory body essentially. And I think this is a really good place to start with people who are unwell, grounding through the feet. If the energy is all going up, 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 where are your feet? How do they feel on the floor? How does it feel to move your toes? Tapping. I draw in lots of different things. Bit of Tai Chi, a bit of massage, what it really varies. Physiotherapy balls, tapping, finding the lungs, putting the hands on the body if that feels safe to do, breathing into the body. So yeah, very body based, really body based. And we actually don't have mats on the ward at the moment, actually physically in the ward. There's a place that people can go to off the ward, but often for whatever reason that's not appropriate. So yeah, we do lots of seated practice, lots of chair-based practice, sometimes standing outside in the garden. It varies. It really varies. And how long people engage for also varies. Like there's no, you turn up and you're not doing an hour's yoga practice or relaxation practice on an acute mental health ward. In my experience, you might get 35 minutes of really beautiful engagement. You might get 20 minutes, you might get 5 minutes, and that's better than nothing. So yeah, a bit of a mix.
And it's all up to them whether they join or not, right? It's
yeah.
So I'd love to chat to you a bit about the work you did with permaculture. Is that right?
Yeah, in Costa Rica.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's funny
How
actually
does that feed in?
Yeah, that's so interesting that you asked. I was just thinking about Costa Rica before I got on the call, because I've got some kale plants outside and I don't really know what I'm doing, to be honest. I haven't ever grown kale in pots before, and I haven't ever put netting up around my pots before, so I'm kind of doing it and I'm getting a bit of imposter syndrome as I was doing it. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here, but it's okay, it's all right, just kind of plodding on with it. Yeah, I'm reminding myself, like, I've worked on land before. I did 3 months on a banana farm that was not permaculture in Australia many moons ago.
Okay.
And yeah, just in beginning of 2020 I was teaching at a beautiful place in Costa Rica called Rancho Margot. And it still is reclaimed rainforest. So you feel like you've been, the rainforest has been there for thousands and thousands of years. It feels really ancient, but it's actually, I can't remember exactly how many years, but less than 10 or less than 14, very short amount of time. And yeah, that was a really beautiful experience of teaching yoga in the shala. And then depending on how many other yoga teachers, if there were 2 yoga teachers, then you teach one class and do, I think it was 3 hours working on the land. And yeah, it was really very beautiful. I mean, I'm very enthusiastic, but I'm not very knowledgeable. I think there's a lot to be said just for doing it. And while I was doing the kale today, I'm reminding myself, like, my ancestors grew kale at some point. This is a native plant to the land, to these isles. So it's in there somewhere. Stella, just put the net on, Gail.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
love to know how it feeds into your maybe mental health practices to be doing that little bit of gardening, or to bring some of that knowledge that you gained from that permaculture farm into your kind of life here in London.
Yeah, really, really good question. I think the last year actually away from London, so being in Eastbourne, very socially isolated, I had no support network, no friends, but I did have the sea, and I had beautiful countryside that I could access by walking to it because I didn't drive. And so I spent a lot of time in solitude, out in nature, and that was a constant throughout the time there. And it was difficult at times, but there was always the sea. The sea was always there. And I think it's probably the influence of having gone away from London and then coming back and being like, I want to be in London because all my people are here and there's more opportunity, and it's got a vibe, but I also want to stay connected to the land. So yeah, a little bit spending time on that beautiful land in Costa Rica, and a little bit lots of other experiences as well. But yeah, really being mindful this time around in London about cultivating relationship with the earth, the earth that we're physically on here, and it not just being like, oh, the earth is, you got to get a train to go out to nature. Like, no, it's here. It's on the other side of this wall, and it's up to us as individuals and as a collective if we connect to it or not. And I think there's a lot of scope for incorporating ecology and gardening and connection with the earth in mental health settings. Again, it kind of depends on the setting. So we have a beautiful yard in the place that I'm working, and we've also got a really beautiful garden that's attached to the hospital. So permaculture garden, all organic. I mean, they do absolutely amazing things there. But again, it's that if you're on an acute ward, is the person sectioned? Can they leave the ward? Is their medication allowing them to leave the ward? Does their behavior allow them to leave the ward? So how can we bring it onto the ward? And that's a good question. Luckily the gardener at the hospital is very supportive of, I'm gonna, because I'm enthusiastic but not skilled, which I think he understands. So he's gonna come and hopefully help and advise how we can set up the space that we do have, so that service users can use it and can access it. And it's really beautiful actually, because I worked on this ward a few months ago, and we had pots and troughs outside, and they were pretty much, there wasn't much going on in them. There's a bit of soil and a few weeds. And there's been a series of service users who've really connected with this. There's not much earth, it's a very small amount of earth, and they found things when they have gone outside, and they've potted them and they've planted them. Now there's stuff growing. I mean, none of us know really what it is. It's some pretty weeds, really. But yeah, I think it's important for all of us.
I think it definitely is. I always remember this beautiful podcast interview actually with a fellow from Ireland called John O'Donoghue. You might be familiar with him. He's a poet, and Krista Tippett on Being. They have this beautiful chat around, growing up in a city, and how do you find those little moments of beauty even within a city, and nature is all around. Like you just have to look up, or like look out at a sunset or a sunrise, and we're in it. Like, no matter how we try to build our walls up around us and pave the ground, it's there. It's just takes a little moment for us to kind of have a look around and find it. And I think that even having like your little potted plants, I have two little potted plants in my window, and they bring me so much joy. I wake up and they start to wake up. They perk up their little leaves, and and they go to sleep at night, and it's like it's so joyous. It's just those little moments of, yeah, it's so good for your mental health, I believe, to have those things around you.
I agree. And I think, yeah, it's like, it is hard. You have to be more conscious in a city to find connection with nature. But then I feel like I've had a remembrance over the last, I don't know, 18 months, that we're not separate to nature. It's like, no, we are nature. You know, when we die, we're going to either be buried in the earth, or we're going to be cremated, and our ashes are going to be returned to the earth, and that in turn is going to nourish the earth, and then something else will grow. So this idea that we're separate, no, we're the same. And yeah, that feels really important to me, and it feels like a really significant remembrance. Like, it feels somatic inside my body. Yeah,
it's amazing. I mean, like, if you think about it, even every breath we take in, you know, we're breathing in the dust
absolutely.
that's been around, and like taking it into our lungs, absorbing it. It forms part of us, and then we breathe out, and
Yes.
that forms part of the world around us. It's like it's all science and cyclical, and you know,
Yes.
it's very present. You can be with these kind of very sort of poetic and spiritual ideas, but in a very real, very physical way. Like,
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And what does your kind of daily self-care practice look like at the moment?
My daily self-care practice at the moment. Well, I try to make myself smoothies. So I try to prep a couple of smoothies a day to eat, so that I'm sustaining myself through nourishment from the earth. I'm not vegan, I'm not plant-based. But yeah, I'm trying to get my vegetables in. So that's a big one. And in the morning time, I really value the journey to work. So I get on one bus, and I know the duration of the bus, and I know what time the bus comes, and I do breath work on the bus, or I do a meditation on the bus. Normally breath work, to be honest with you. That's one of the things that if I don't do that in the morning, I'm less likely to have a good day. If I do that in the morning, then the day generally is better. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of rehabilitation around my foot as well. So when I'm not working, or when I'm not plotting away, trying to get my ideas into fruition, yeah, reformers Pilates, and I've just started training again with one of my best friends, a trainer, and body work as well. So they're just things that they are expensive. And when I was a student, it was like, I know what I need to do to nourish and sustain myself, but I can't afford to do it. So again, it comes back to who has access to these things. But I understand that I need to chuck some money at it, basically. And I love my body, and I want it to work the best way it can. So yeah, there's that element. Gratitude in the evening, as a sign that it's time to go to bed. Lemon balm, and ginseng in the day, liquid ginseng that you have with tea. Again, it's expensive, but for me, it works. I feel more focused, and yeah, just more energized when I have it. And lemon balm is like one of my non-negotiables in the evening, for just taking the edge off the central nervous system. And I'm trying to get enough sleep, but I struggle with that, actually. I can sleep so well. I have no problem going to sleep. I sleep really, really well. The trouble that I have is that my body clock, I'm quite nocturnal. So having to be in hospital at 9 a.m., having to get up at 6:30, really requires going to bed at like 10:30, you know, if you want to get enough sleep. And there's just, unless I'm ill, that just ain't happening. So I'm really trying to make sure that I get enough sleep, but varying degrees of success with that one. So some days, by the end of the week, I'm pretty knackered. Yeah.
Sleep is the best. It's so important.
Yes, isn't it? So good.
The other thing I really want to ask you about is your retreat, your upcoming retreat. It sounds so amazing. Speaking about taking yourself into nature and self-care.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. I'm so excited about, the retreats. So these are having two events, actually. So there's going to be a yoga retreat, and then a creative energetic exchange, which has a lower price ticket. It doesn't come with a chef. So the idea is that we eat communally, we prepare the food together, and that people come and share their various different gifts. So I'm really excited about that one, because it's really in line with what I'm wanting to cultivate, and I think it'd be really cool as well. So I'll open it and close it and do all kind of the logistics, and then people just come, and it will be based around emergent strategy. So leadership can come from anywhere in the flock at any time. So there's no hierarchy, essentially. There'll be some guidelines, but no hierarchy. And the retreat is going to be beautiful, I think. So I'm having my crew of people that are coming. So I'm hoping that my sister, who's an hour away in Bristol, will come and offer body work, which she's very skilled in doing. And it'll be so beautiful to have her lovely, grounded, wonderful presence there. And two of my really close friends, my friend Claire, who is a wonderful witch and mother, and she's going to be karma-ing.
Yeah.
She's going to be the karma baby. I'm sure that's not a word. And just being there and being wonderful and helping to create extra layers of safety. And one of my best friends, Roz, who is a chocolatier, plant-based maker of chocolate, very, very good at what she does, and she's going to be doing the chefing. So crew of 4 and 12 students, so very intimate. And the lands that we're doing it on, I spent 2 summers there, and it's very, very beautiful. So it's kind of it's in Herefordshire, near Gloucestershire. It's about half an hour from the Forest of Dean. And you've got like a valley on one side, and a meadow with wildflowers, and then an orchard that goes down. It's really just like, it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. And the first year that we went there, it's like everything was closed. There were no festivals, nothing was open. So we were like, okay, we actually went for Roz's birthday. My friend who's going to chef there. And I had the biggest psychedelic experience that I've ever had in my life, which is quite a statement. And yeah, I had very clear images and message of goddess. And it was just, I can't really describe it as anything apart from a sexual awakening. It was extremely intense and beautiful. And just the message that I got from it is that all is well, everything is good, all is well. And yeah, and I went back last year and also had another very intense psychedelic experience there, where I did a lot of processing on a miscarriage that I'd had quite a long time ago now. So it was kind of, I went there the second time while I was doing EMDR therapy to support processing, and my safe space was the meadow. And then I went to the meadow and yeah, did a load of processing on that. So I feel very connected to the land. And I didn't realize until relatively recently that it's actually very close to ancestral land. So my dad's mother. So when we talk about our heritage, we say, oh, we're Irish and we're French. And that completely doesn't acknowledge that we've also got a grandmother who's passed, Nana, Barbara Billerey, and she was from the Forest of Dean. And so it feels really significant, because it's almost like this shadow part of our heritage that whenever you ask me or my sisters, it's like, we're Irish and French. It's like, no, we're also a quarter Forest of Dean, which is this beautiful land. So I'm really excited by it. As you can probably tell, I'm really excited to go back and to hold space. As soon as I got there, I was like, I want to do a retreat there. And there was nowhere to do yoga when we first went. And since then, the people who own the land have they've done up, can't think of what the word is, the barn. So there's a barn that's close by, and yeah, they've put a roof on, and there's a floor there now. So we've got somewhere sheltered that we can do a yogic practice. And it feels like it's developed very organically. And yeah, I'm really, really excited. I think it's going to be wonderful.
That sounds amazing. Like, first of all, no doubt any offerings you create are going to be wonderful. I have attended a retreat with yourself and your sister before, and you both just held such a beautiful space for everyone. And yeah, it just felt really, really nourishing and wonderful. And you know, can kind of tell by the people you draw together as well. That says a lot about you as teachers also, and everybody was so lovely, and I think that importance of feeling a connection to the land where you share those kind of really well thought out kind of spaces for people. I think it's so important because it's like there's a sense for you that it's grounding, so you feel super grounded in your ability to offer what you have to offer. And like, yeah, I think it sounds like it's going to be amazing. Very excited for you. And this other offering that you have, who can come to that? Because that sounds really amazing. Is it if you have something to offer, or because I feel like other people might want to even just join in on that, or is that just
I mean, to be honest, I got such an overwhelming response for the co-creation retreat. So it's a midweek retreat, so it kind of appeals to, I don't know, students might not be studying, freelancers, artists, etc. That I'm actually not going to bother advertising it anymore, because I kind of want to cherry pick a little bit more, like who's going to come. And I think it'd be really cool not just to have loads of yogis there, to have some artists there, or some photographers, or whatever it is. Everybody has got a gift. You could be the fire person, you could be the human who makes the fire every evening, and that would be a beautiful gift to the group. Or you could be the person who makes a banging dinner and does the washing up afterwards. That could be your gift. Or maybe you want to sing a song, or whatever it is. So everybody's got something that they can offer. And yeah, I mean, really ideally what I'd like to do in this space is maybe to have a yoga retreat, a co-creation retreat, have a party, because that's what we've done the last few years. And if the idea of co-creating is popular, and it seems to be, then maybe have a couple of them, and get people together. And yeah, I'm really into the vibe of exchange and mutual aid. And yeah, and we know, as people who run retreats and who go on retreats, how transformative they can be. And trying to make it accessible for people. So, well, if I'm there anyway doing a yoga retreat, what difference does it? It'd be lovely to have people join me and do something else in the week where there's not so much responsibility on me.
I think that's such a beautiful idea. It has so much potential there, because as self-employed people, we don't connect with others all the time, and we don't get these opportunities. Big part of like the podcast for me was to reach out to individuals and have these conversations around our industry and around the work that we do, because it's so valuable to share ideas and to cross-pollinate in a way. And we get so much more when we are together. Basically, we're able to generate more ideas and create bigger things, and there's so much value add there. So I think it's a wonderful idea. Very excited to see where that goes as well.
I think it's really exciting, just generally having conversations with like-minded people, and listening to their perspective and taking away the bits that resonate with you. And I feel like really blessed to be back in London, and to be more able to have such conversations with people who are on a kind of similar brainwave.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So the final question I'd love to ask you, which I ask everyone, is what does it mean to you to live well?
What does it mean to me to live well? To live well, I think living well is having the basics in terms of safety, the right that we all have to live on this earth, and to be nourished, and to have somewhere safe to sleep, and to feel the love of our kin, and to be able to give that love back, which is sometimes hard. That's to live well, to live in abundance in all of the ways that can come through the body, to be healthy, and to be satisfied when our health goes, because it will. It's like this idea that we're always going to be able to do the things that we can do now. No, we're going to get old, and we're going to get ill, and we're going to die. And I know it sounds very morbid and very macabre, but I guess living well is also integrating that into our wellness, isn't it? It's like we're not always going to be well, and being okay with that. And chocolate.
Perfect. Stella, it has been an absolute pleasure, and I could probably stay chatting to you for the rest of the evening, I'd say. So, but we only have this much time, and I have to let you get back to your evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate your time. It's so lovely to see your face as well.
You too. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. As I'm sure you will love to find out more about Stella, you can head over to her Instagram. Her Instagram is Stel, STEL_movement_ to find out all about what she has on offer, her upcoming retreats and classes, and just her really beautiful sharing she has on there on her Instagram platform. Thank you once again for supporting and listening to the show. Please feel free to share this episode on with anybody you think who would find it useful. As always, I look forward to hearing from you. Please like the show so I can continue on doing what I do. It's really helpful. And if you have any comments or any guests you would like to hear from, or any topics you would like to hear more about, please let me know in the comments below. I hope you have a beautiful day, and